Thank you. Welcome everybody to the Infrastructure and Planning and Assets Committee. For today, present are Councillors Deputy Mayor Nicole Johnnick, Councillor Tully, Councillor Doyle, Mayor Harding and Councillor Madden. We do have as observer, pardon me, we do have as observer Councillor Augustine, I'm just looking around, and Councillor Martin at the back of the room. So, banished, was he? No. I now ask Councillor Madden to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thanks, Chair. The Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of proud people.
Is there any declarations of interest to be made? No declarations of interest. I'll move to business outstanding, item 1, capital investment in provisional projects policy, proposed amendments. I'd like to move that the matter be deferred until the February meeting for further discussions among the councillors. And that...
Can I just raise a point of order that it appears that it's, Chair, it's on the table, so I think that to move that procedural motion it'd have to come off the table.
Okay.
Otherwise it just lies on the table.
Yeah, I've obtained varying different advice on that, but I'm very happy to go with the meeting on that. Would someone... I'll move that the matter be removed from the table.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those...
Can we discuss it? I'll just move it off the table.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just taking it off the table at this stage. So is there any discussion regarding that motion? No. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. I now move that the matter be, as a result of conversations with many councillors, request that the matter requires further discussion. So I move that the matter be deferred until the February meeting to provide ample time for that discussion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Johnnick, thank you. Discussion.
Chair, look, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that that you're willing to lead a discussion for us to find a workable solution for everyone. May I ask in the meantime that all of the councillors do communicate with each other on their projects that they've got until a policy position is found. And I guess I would really encourage we don't want to hold up these provisional projects. I guess I would urge that we bring this back to the table in December. That way we can start in the new year with a fresh start and being able to start the new year with a policy in place for everyone's. So I put that towards everyone to consider. I guess I'll move a foreshadowed motion that we bring it to the December meeting.
Any further discussion? Just on the matter, Mayor, and I respond to your inquiry, just the request to me was that because there's such a short turnaround between now and the December meeting, only 2 weeks between now and that meeting, that we perhaps should give it, particularly at this time of year and other briefings and the like that we have, that it might be best to hold over until the new year. So...
Master, what your views are on councillors sharing their information, just
what
projects they're working on. In particular, we are trying to find those efficiencies and you know, bounce off each other's good ideas as well.
I certainly would encourage that to the other councillors, and I think it was only a couple of days ago Councillor Doyle and I were discussing potential projects. We're more than happy to share those matters with you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I may add, Councillor Antonelli and I, yes, had a recent meeting, and we almost have a living, breathing document now of all the projects, certainly that we're discussing and are in the mix. So I personally am more than happy to share that with you for your,
Thank you, Chair.
Concur. Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any further discussion on the matter? The motion as on the screen.
So, Chair, if I say, in that case, I'll I'll withdraw my foreshadowed motion.
Move forward your...
I'll
okay.
withdraw my foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Sorry, you withdrew?
I'm withdrawing my foreshadowed
sorry.
motion.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, no further discussion. I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? Against, that's carried. Item 2, confirmation of minutes of the meeting of 15th of October. Anyone like to move that they are considered an accurate reflection and record of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Madden. Seconder, Councillor Johnnick. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against, that's carried. Unanimous. Item 3, officers' reports. First one is the IGO Parking Action Plan. Is there any questions of the officers in relation to this? Yes, there are questions. Mr. DeLeo, I should have acknowledged your presence here too, and as the acting GM, so welcome. Would you like to call up the relevant officers? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and for the record, Tony DeLeo, Acting General Manager, Infrastructure Strategy, Capital Delivery and Assets. If there are specific questions, I will ask James MacArthur to come up.
Chair, my questions will be regarding how the community consultation was done, if that helps with who to bring up. Thank you.
James.
Sorry, mine's of a similar nature. It's about the operational effect of this.
Thank you, James. If you can just give your name and position, thanks.
James MacArthur, Senior Transport Planner.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Thank you very much for this very detailed report and your vigilance on this. Do you mind just sort of succinctly outlining the consultation with the community on this, please?
Yep. So this project's been going back since April 2022 and also running concurrently with the IGO City of Ipswich Transport Plan review. So there were two main engagement phases within this project. There was a Part A and a Part B. Some of those were earlier on in the project. There was multiple different, strategies that we implemented. There was a Shape Your Ipswich campaign. There were pop-ups associated with the IGO review, and there was also meetings with stakeholders that we thought were relevant within our two principal activity centres. So within Ipswich Central, we met with the large stakeholders, the Ipswich Hospital, St Andrews, the Chamber of Commerce. They had some representatives there. Within Springfield, we met with USQ Springfield. We met with the Mater Hospital and some other stakeholders within Springfield Central as well.
Mr. MacArthur, what was the consultation like with the traders in the top of town? Probably the most congested part of or the most demand parking areas.
Yeah, the traders in town, it was quite mixed. I think there was a bit of a acknowledgement that there was some parking supply challenges, but also the need for turnover of parking bays for their business and operations. So yeah, we acknowledge that, and the plan does acknowledge that there is some challenges with regards to parking supply, and there are some recommendations to try address some of those challenges as well.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Tay, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, just a general question, but specific to the document, which I've noted is 178 pages long. We had discussed previously about changing circumstances, and specifically at a previous meeting I was talking about Springfield Central, when what would be the trigger for some of these changes to come into effect. One of the examples I gave was Australia Avenue, just to use a specific example. My question is this, and then I talked about the importance of, and that could be several years away, the importance of consultation then with local councillors, yep. Including mayor and local councillors, and possibly the community. It might be more advisory than consulting. Can you point in here to the way in which councillors would be consulted rather than just a decision made and suddenly signs are put up without, and the first that councillors know is when they read about it in the newspaper.
Yeah. I think there was an acknowledgement within previous sessions that we've held that through the development of parking precinct plans, there would be involvement with the councillors. They would be drafted through the councillors, and the parking precinct plans, there is some guidance in here as to the timing of when those will look to be developed, noting precincts within Springfield Central. They're all at various stages. There are precincts that have more mature land uses. So as things come online, then we can look to flesh those out a bit more. But there are some indicative guides with regards to timing within the report.
Thanks. And my question is broader than just Springfield. Those precinct parking plans, is the process of those contained in here in detail? Like you mentioned, that's the timing of consultation. Do those precinct parking plans, are they embraced by this without just a mere reference to them about how they come into effect, when they're done, how they're done, and what consultation takes place? Or is that a separate document?
I guess that will need to be determined at a later date. There isn't guidelines as to how they should be structured, but they should be looking to, I guess, there are a bunch of actions within the IGO parking action plan. Those parking precinct plans should be, I guess, moving some of those actions forward, but more at a detailed basis. This is the citywide action plan. The detail we'll be getting into within those parking precinct plans.
All right, I might just make the comment rather than a question, and I'm not debating the issue, and I'm satisfied with that. But could I ask through the CEO that when those parking or process for continuing to develop the parking precinct plans, they do involve that consultation process at that time, which could be in some of those more mature areas, as you mentioned, very soon. Others could be years away. But I think, in my view, as a local councillor, it's important that that consultation takes place at an early stage. So I see that not so much as the detail of the precinct plan itself, but the process that's involved in the future development of them.
Yep.
Thank you.
I note Councillor Tully recommendation B speaks to communicating to the community. I'm wondering whether something like that could be reflected in that recommendation.
I think it's just been said, this is a pretty broad document.
Yeah.
And that's okay to generally communicate. I'm getting down to a little bit more detail about the parking precinct plans rather than trying to fashion some wording now, as long as that's incorporated when that's being developed. Not necessarily for each one, but the process for the parking precinct plans.
Mm-hmm.
If I can, through you, Chair.
Thank you.
Just in response to Councillor Tully, just note that, confirm that I'll take that as an action. I'll record that as an action and execute that accordingly, organisationally, if that's satisfactory, to make sure that councillors, divisional councillors, including the mayor, are consulted and involved on the process and timing. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councillor Madden, you raised with me just a matter earlier too.
I just asked a general question, and I don't think it relates to you.
Okay.
Today, right now, there's a meeting in the library about our transport plan. Are you involved in that in any way?
I have been involved in the, I guess, the preliminary works with the IGO review.
I just wondered whether it overlapped with what you were doing, and maybe this report was premature until that consultation was concluded.
I don't believe it is premature. We've been trying to achieve alignment between the documents. I guess technically this report is an action from the current IGO, City of Ipswich Transport Plan, and we've been developing in such way with acknowledgement of the review, and a lot of the engagement that was done for the parking action plan was actually through the IGO review consultation process. There was plenty of discussion about parking within that engagement.
And will we ultimately receive a report as a result of this process that's obviously being carried out right now with regard to our transport plan?
Correct. So there will be, there's been some briefing notes previously. There will also be an update to the Shape Your Ipswich page, but I understand that the engagement reports are available to the public, but also to councillors.
I'm sort of wondering how we deal with transport, given that we don't have any buses or trains. What is the focus of the transport report?
The transport report, they'll be looking to, council will be looking to address, bring the report to councillors in the new year. We're kind of at the end of the IGO review process, but yeah, there is acknowledgement that council has a role, but not, I guess, a complete role with regards to transport within Ipswich. We don't control public transport, but we do have an advocacy role in that space. Okay. So there are things that we control directly, like parking or active transport or local roads, freight on local roads. Public transport, we have more of an advocacy role.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, then I move the recommendations, unless someone else would like to move them, that the report as detailed be adopted. That's the shorthand version, and that B, the outcomes and key messages of the action plan be communicated to the community. Yes, seconded, Councillor Doyle, thank you. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge and confirm I'm supportive of the updated parking strategy. In particular, I just want to call out the updated parking precincts around Ipswich Central, noting as the precinct is now opening up, and it's wonderful to see we're attracting lots of visitors and residents using all the restaurants and entertainment. But I am very conscious of, continually supporting and protecting our local privately owned businesses along Brisbane Street and Ellenborough Street. As the council officers just mentioned, the turnover of the parking is critical to the success of their business. And so it probably becomes more of an enforcement and regulatory issue. I guess, I don't want to see my residents receiving parking infringements, but we need to balance it with protecting and supporting our local businesses. So we probably do need that continual regulatory and enforcement action to make sure people aren't overstaying. We have 1,000 car parks here at the Nicholas Street Precinct car park, and there are many opportunities to park free of charge. So just trying to strike that balance, I guess, with Ipswich Central parking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any further discussion? Mayor Honey.
Thank you, Chair. Look, in order for our city to function effectively and be productive, viable travel and parking choices do need to be provided. This plan has identified 31 actions for council to deliver over the coming years to address the challenges and opportunities we face regarding parking, especially as more and more people do come into our CBD. This new plan takes into consideration the challenges for parking in the fastest growing city in the state. So it does look at the increased traffic, increased congestion, the demands that growth places on transport infrastructure, including parking. And when I speak to mayors around Queensland, it doesn't matter whether it's Longreach and Ipswich, they all talk about the issues with parking in their CBD. There are currently just over 6,200 publicly available owned and operated parking spaces in Ipswich Central, made up of about 4,200 on-street public parking spaces and about 2,000 off-street public parking spaces. That's the equivalent of 12 football fields of parking. So this plan looks at how we can increase how many people are utilising these existing parks before more public parking is provided. It also looks across our broader local government area rather than just the CBD. I would like to highlight the extensive community consultation that has occurred within the community, within the businesses, industry, and within the Ipswich community panels as well. So thank you very much, CEO, for that. There have been a series of in-person and online meetings, community pop-up sessions, interviews with industry bodies, engagement with 2 Ipswich community panel workshops and online consultation on our Shape Your Ipswich website. At each step of the way in this three-phase journey, feedback was continually incorporated into the plan and those drafts shared back with stakeholders and the community. I'd like to thank everyone who participated to help shape this IGO parking action plan. It only works properly if we do get that community consultation. And ultimately, we want parking in Ipswich to be safe, we want it to be accessible, and we want it to support our local economy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion? Observers? Nothing? Just take the opportunity to commend and thank the IGO team for their work on this document, particularly their work in the community consultation phase, as the Mayor highlighted, and also with respect to what Councillor Madden highlighted, their involvement was ever so evident recently when there were changes to the bus routes in Ipswich. The IGO team were instrumental in that advocacy. All in all, this report, this plan, is to deliver better outcomes for both residents and businesses who count on the availability of parking. It replaces the 13-year-old strategy that existed here for particularly Ipswich Central, and the new parking action plan will manage citywide demand for parking for the next 10 years. Council began updating this about 2 years ago. Extensive community consultation, as the Mayor has already highlighted, to get a better understanding of what businesses and residents required with respect to off-street parking. A key foundation of the plan is to take a demand management approach. Again, that is probably the best balance that you can utilise for parking. And again, I commend the IGO team for their efforts in establishing a plan based around that. We have increasingly diverse needs for both businesses and residents, and to get that balance right is extremely important. There needs to be greater access for loading zones, disability spaces, and even more for the future with respect to electric vehicle charging stations and parking for bicycles even. So the parking in the Ipswich CBD has always been in high demand, but you will see that the plan also includes a new parking management framework for the precincts of places like Springfield Central. It also looks at school parking needs and also incorporates new contemporary curbside uses such as micro-mobility, electric vehicle parking, as I highlighted, and the broader street uses such as parklets and outdoor dining. So I commend the team, I commend the report, and I now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Item 4. Asset and Infrastructure Services Department Capital Delivery. Is there any questions? There being no questions, the recommendations are that the report be received and contents noted. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Seconder. Councillor Madden. Discussion. Mayor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see the progress on the bridge replacement at Hidden Vale Road. It's good to see that's going well, with the project remaining on track for completion early 2025, which will be very much welcome. The installation of the ground movement sensors at the Marburg Detention Basin is ongoing and programmed to occur in early 2025. And it's good to see the preliminary design activities for the upgrades of the Tivoli Sports Complex and the Redbank Plains Rec Reserve Sports Facility are well underway. And I also note around the place that the playground equipment at Cameron Park has been lifted into place. So it's exciting to see that come along. And once that work is done, that park will be a district level recreation park, and you can see what an impact it will have as our city grows. Also note our really large road projects such as the Springfield Parkway and Greenbank Arterial Road upgrade, and obviously we're on target for those signals being commissioned before Christmas on stage 3. And also the Redbank Plains Road upgrade. I know it's much anticipated, so I was pleased to see that Council was reporting that the project remains on track for a practical completion by next month, by December. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yeah, just on the matter of Cameron Park, I believe Councillor Doyle, you're looking forward to the completion of that work as well, as am I. I'm really looking forward to taking my granddaughter, who doesn't live too far away from there, to enjoy the swings and other facilities that are going to be there. So we're all excited for that. There being no further discussion, I put the motion that the report be received and contents noted. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you, Mr. DeLeo. Now, changeover of general managers. There is general business towards the end, Mr. DeLeo, so we may be calling upon you again. Morning, Mr. Davey.
Good morning.
Item 4, is it? So 5, my apologies. Exercise of delegation report. Is there any questions? There being no questions, again, the recommendation is to receive and note. Do I have a mover? Councillor Doyle, seconder. Councillor Johnnick. Any discussion?
Actually, apologies, Chair. I do have a question. I do apologise. It's,
okay, we can go back. So you have a question, do you?
Sorry, that's okay. If I could ask, with your indulgence, the General Manager, just in regards to the city switch development, that stage 7, I know that the DA hasn't gone in and just it's quite contentious in our community. Just have we heard anything? Have they put their latest reports in, or where's that at?
Yes, Mayor. So we've obviously, or through the Chair, we've requested additional information from the applicant in respect to that development on a number of technical fronts. We have not yet received a full and complete information request. We understand they're working on it, and we'll either see a draft or a full final version of that in due course. The nature of the requests are quite technical, so it's not unusual for these things to take weeks or months to come to fruition, particularly in the flooding space.
Through the Chair, have they given any indication, will the report come this year, next year?
I would expect it this year because they've been working on it for quite some time. But just to appreciate the complexity of what we've requested and what's required, the specialists will probably work on parameters for some kind of model change, and they might put that through a computer system which will take days to process and then see if it works and then do that process again. So that process in itself could take weeks. So, you know, leading up to that process, that will also take weeks. So it very well could come in by the end of the year, but we could be very well in the same position at the early next year.
So, Mr. Davey, noting the complexity, is there any leeway in the Planning Act for that time frame? So I know that once the clock starts ticking, we've got 20 days. Does that change if it's more complex and it's going to take more time for council to review? What's the process?
No, unfortunately not. It was a submission that we made at the time that the development industry do have time as part of an information request, but outside of that, they can seek a suspension of the time frames to address matters. We weren't afforded that same opportunity through legislation. So we can seek an extension with the applicant to process the application. That's by agreement.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may.
Yes.
A further question for Mr. Davey.
Does it relate to the same matter? That,
Yes.
oh, cool. Yes, go ahead.
Given the discussion with Mayor Harding, Mr. Davey, are we ready to go, given it will be a tight turnaround once the developer does submit that information? Internally, what are we going to do, I guess, to try and do that deep analysis to see that we're satisfied and in doing so giving assurance to residents, given how contentious this one is?
Yeah, so I suppose firstly we're used to dealing with these timeframes. Yep. The majority of applications we process are code accessible, meaning that all of those applications, and at a guess, I'd say in excess of 80% are subject to those timelines. So we're familiar with it. There's a complexity level here that's obvious. We're using internal resources to give us support as necessary to be able to properly and thoroughly assess the flood material in particular, but the other material. And we have external resources on standby essentially to support us in that process. But ultimately, when you get in these positions, the teams do what's necessary to get the job done without putting us at risk of a deemed approval or anything like that. Okay,
great. Thank you.
Yes, just on that same matter, if I may, Mr. Davey, you highlighted 20 days from the time, and if they do lodge their information request, we have 20 days. Now, just for I guess more so for the public interest. 20 days doesn't sound like a long time, and if they're going to do it before the end of this year, we've got Christmas coming up and other public holidays. Can you just inform us what days are counted as part of that 20 days and what days aren't counted?
So I'd have to just double check with the legislation. However, the approach is generally that it's business days, and it doesn't include the period of Christmas to New Year, but it does include the other days. And obviously we operate in alignment with that.
And they're business
availability,
days.
Business days. Yes. So it doesn't include public holidays, obviously.
Or that week between Christmas and New Year.
Correct. So the other thing to note is if we've used some of that 20 days in the time it took us to issue an information request, that reduces that timeline. So we have to carefully record that and plan around that. But again, we're very familiar with doing that, given that we've got, thousands of applications we process a year.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on that matter? Any further questions in general? We did move the motion, if I do remember correctly. So I will put the motion. All those in favour?
So may we go to discussion now?
Sorry?
May we go to discussion now, Chair?
Oh.
Yes, sorry about that. My fault
sorry.
because of the questions.
Yes, you
In
do
moving
have discussion now.
Chair, I just note that this particular development, and noting, Ipswich, like many cities along the Brisbane and Bremer rivers, are floodplains. This is a code-accessible development, so it's not one that's coming to council for a vote. And obviously the Planning Act, the council officers have to follow the law in accordance with the Planning Act and our planning frameworks and our planning scheme. That doesn't negate our obligation to consult with the community. And I guess when I'm looking at the timeframes, Chair, as you've been involved with many meetings as well with impacted residents, we're just trying to work with the residents so they have the opportunity to exercise their rights as well and make sure that they're informed of timeframes. There is a fear in the community, those that are impacted by this, if this development proceeds, that they won't have the adequate time to exercise their rights as well. So I think the timings are really important to the community. They really want the opportunity to participate fully in this process. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Mayor, I concur with your comments there. And that, again, that's the reason why I asked the question regarding the relevant days to be counted in that 20-day period. Any further discussion? No further discussion. The motion has been put. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. So we have item 6 being Planning and Environment Court Action Status Report. Recognising there may be some confidential matters in relation to this, I do just remind the committee, if they do have questions reflective of the court matters at hand, we may need to close the meeting. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, there are.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Are the matters, the questions of a general nature, or are they relevant to
probably
court?
more specific, certainly in relation to 1 mile.
Okay.
So I think that's probably for closed session.
Before we... Okay, we'll do it. Yes, thank you, Mr Davey. We might start with a summary of the matters and then if there's any questions.
We've already got the summary.
Yeah.
I think we need to cut to the chase about what items we want to talk about.
Oh,
Well, we don't.
fair enough. And is your matter, does your question involve
A specific matter, yeah.
Okay, so we will need to close the meeting.
I think we can close it to discuss both or any other items which are listed there, but to be specific, I would ask that the meeting be closed in respect of the one item listed under Division 2.
Could we expand that to Division 3 as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's multiple items.
I suspect I know the matter you're referring to, Councillor Doyle.
So 1 mile Chubb Street, and given
Yes.
that there's court proceedings, I thought...
So you have questions, and we should include that in the same motion?
Yeah.
The motion is...
Can I just say Division 2, that's the property at 288 Brisbane Terrace, Goodna.
And Division 3 is obviously cheap stays.
The address you mentioned, didn't you?
Is 84 Chubb Street.
84 Chubb Street. I'll just wait for the motion to be presented. Just for the purpose of those members of the gallery, when matters are before the court and discussions relate to questions relating to that matter, those sorts of matters before the court, due to confidentiality reasons, the meeting is generally closed. The motion is to close the meeting to discuss matters relating to the matters of 288 Brisbane Terrace, Goodna, and 84 Chubb Street, 1 mile. The mover was Councillor Tully, seconder Councillor Doyle.
Yeah, I think we need some additional wording to indicate which section of the regulation that it's under.
I thought did you highlight that, Councillor Tully?
No, but probably 254J3 E.
E, is it? There you go. Oh, yes. Okay, yep. Thank you.
I think I would cover it.
So that in accordance with 254, section 254J, subsection 3, further subsection E of the local government regulation, the meeting moved to closed session to discuss the matters pertaining to 288 Brisbane Terrace and the Cheap Stays application or development at 84 Chubb Street, 1 mile. Moved Councillor Tully, seconded Councillor Doyle. Happy to second, thank you. No need for discussion, is there? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. The meeting is now closed. And now I'm asking that we come back online. We are live? Okay, just welcome back. Is there any further questions? I will put the motion and then open it up to discussion. Again, I believe the motion is for a receive and note. Mover, Councillor Doyle, seconder, Councillor Tully. Discussion.
Thank
Councillor
you, Chair.
Doyle.
If I may, just noting we've just been in closed session talking about sensitive legal matters before the courts, but I just want to note the record that we did have a chat about cheap stays and Chubb Street at 1 Mile, noting the residents' concerns. I hear from them regularly, have done over the last couple of years about this. So it is front of mind for me and other councillors, the impacts of residents being in the path of water during times of flood, as well as the additional impact on our local road network that this particular development might bring. So I am watching closely and I will, I'm committed to updating my residents along the way. Thank you.
Very good. Just any further discussion? Councillor Madden.
Chair, I'd just like to congratulate our legal team. I mean, I recall the first list of court actions that I saw when first got elected at council, and what are we down to now? 1, 2,
I believe it's 5.
5, maybe 6.
Correct.
But I think that's excellent, and it shows the hard work of our legal team in trying to resolve matters, mostly amicably, but where we need to, we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Further discussion? Yes, I was going to raise the same issue. I remember when we were after the election in March, and I can't remember the exact number, but I do believe it was around 10, maybe 9. Do you recall?
I actually think at that time we might have had 12 or 13.
12 or 13.
Yeah. We've made some significant moves. That's probably the peak number. But yeah, thank you for the kind words. It's a team effort, and certainly the support of legal and our staff is great in getting this. And the objective is to avoid a high number, because ultimately it doesn't necessarily matter what the content of the appeal is, they all cost money. And the lower that number is, the less money we're spending on defending matters.
Thank you very much, Mr Davey. If there's no further discussion, the motion has been put. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. Mayor, you did raise your hand, did you not? Yes, thank you. Sorry, I just missed it. And now we have any notices of motion? There being none. Matters arising. We do have a matter arising. The membership of the committee, we have had a request pursuant to section 7 of the council's terms of reference that Councillor Madden be appointed to a member of this committee. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Madden already is. Councillor Martin.
Repeat after me.
How did you sneak in, Councillor
Madden?
We have far too many surnames beginning with M.
Oh, Madden, Martin,
council.
Madsen. It's going to be a nightmare.
I think I'll change my name by deed poll.
Smith? Okay, so
I
yes,
thought
for Councillor...
Kolashevsky. I thought Kolashevsky is a good name.
Sorry, Councillor Martin be appointed. Recommended for appointment. His appointment would commence at if approved through council, would commence at the next round of committee, correct? Is that the next ordinary council meeting. So just around the table, questions? No? Someone like to move that motion? Councillor Doyle, and seconded Councillor Johnnick. Thank you. All those in favour?
May we discuss it?
Oh, yes, let's discuss.
Just to say, welcome aboard. Consistent with, I think, the last 4.5 years, every time a councillor has put their hand up to say, hey, I'd like to contribute to a committee, this council's always supported. We've never stopped any councillor doing it, and I'll continue to do that. So welcome aboard, Councillor Martin, hopefully.
Yes, and on that matter too, I welcome working with you, Councillor Martin, on this committee. So any further discussion? All those in favour? Surprisingly, it's unanimous. I mean that jokingly, of course. It was to be expected. Okay, and the next item is general business, and I do believe we have questions in general business. I do understand we have one. Is there any further around the table? There was one presented by Councillor Madden. Would you like to put your general business question?
Is this the one relating to street sweepers?
No, it was more the one to the notification of public notifications.
Oh,
through
yes,
the planning
yes,
process.
yes. Thanks very much, Chair. I've had recently this difficulty that's arisen with when notices are put on lots. You know, they're put on lots always in anticipation of the consultation period beginning. Well, I had a situation out at Thaguna where a notification was put on, say, a Wednesday. Well, as councillors are aware, we get our notifications on the Monday. The criteria for listing notifications on the Monday is that in the preceding week, the consultation period has begun. So we get notification after the consultation period begins, but also it's complicated by the fact we only get notifications on a Monday. What I'd like, this is what I'd like us to get notification when the development application is lodged, not when the consultation period begins. I really think the consultation period's irrelevant. I mean, I was sort of asked for information about this development application and somebody sent me a picture of the sign that had been put on the property, but I knew I wouldn't receive notification for about a week later.
Yeah,
That's my submission.
sorry, I just note that Councillor Doyle had her. Go ahead, Councillor Doyle.
And Councillor Madden's quite right in his summary and assessment there. I guess if I may just add what I've been doing for the last few years. Generally, you are made aware of these developments at the very early stage by residents. It's whether they've received, you know, an informal notice from a developer or they see a sign go up or some activity on the land. Every now and again, we may not immediately be notified by some means, but and from there, my office coordinates with obviously planning to get the information we need, and I've worked closely with my staff to then formulate information notices out to residents, and that's worked really well. How we formalise that or get the early information via council rather than relying on the community or our own knowledge as a divisional councillor, I'm open to that, but I'm not sure what it looks like.
I note that there's some further questions, or further discussion. However, I might just ask, with the indulgence of the committee, Mr. Davey to just explain the process to us. I see this as a public interest matter. The reason why when Councillor Madden raised it with me, I said, send me a note, we'll bring it up as a general business item. So maybe you, Mr. Davey, you can indulge us.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. The process is a little complex, as you'd appreciate, and as time's gone on, as we've evolved from hard copy processing of applications and hard copy, publishing of applications, including by newspaper, we've moved into a phase where everything moves a lot faster, and that's through electronic means, so email or electronic lodgements. So we're very mindful of making sure that the community and yourselves are aware of applications, and we can obviously modify things over time to be better at that. At present, there are a couple of options for councillors to get access to information on applications. The first, and probably the fastest, to be honest, is to sign up on Development Eye, and that can assist by sending you applications that might be of interest. So, for example, if you've got a penchant for service stations, you can get a report that lets you know anytime a service station application is lodged. The second step is that when an application comes in through the week, we send a report out on Mondays at 6 a.m, I believe, which includes a list of the applications that have been lodged and some details on them. And if you're interested in looking at those, again, you can use Development Eye, but you can also request information from myself to clarify or to seek more feedback. In that same report, we publish applications that have progressed into the public notification phase. And here's where it gets a bit complex. The public notification phase has a set commencement date. And that commencement date is when other actions are completed. So that could be a variety of actions, whether it's responding to us or responding to state government matters.
Could I just clarify, when you say a set commencement date, it is actually a date, hard and fast date, or is it actually a period of time from when that could commence?
It's a date, and that is that the applicant might respond to our information request, and the minute they finalise that, the next day, the public notification phase starts. Now, that doesn't mean that they start public notification on that day. So we know that they're in the phase, and that's when we start the public notification task. So on Development Eye for the community, that task appears commenced. And for the councillors, that task appears in that Monday report at 6 a.m. We've got no control over how long the applicant takes to do that actual notification.
To commence it.
Yep. So the commencement actually involves sending letters to the adjoining owners, the public notice on the property, and a distribution through media, which can include electronic newspapers. So that could happen in some cases, if they're really keen, that could happen the day after they lodge the material to us. So there's not much lead time. By the time, you know, the community might see it, we may not even be aware as officers that it started. The alternative is that they don't start straight away and they have up to 20 business days to commence. They can even seek an extension to that time frame, but they might commence that on day 19. So we could be waiting for that 3 to 4 week period for them to commence. And once they commence, most applications are notified for 15 business days. So depending upon the circumstances, if, for example, that notification started on the Monday, you wouldn't see it in the Monday, you'd see it in the report, but you wouldn't know the signs are up on the property. So there isn't necessarily an easy solution to give us as a collective good information of when they will literally start and when the clock starts ticking for the community. The only way to seek a correction of that is to be conservative and just assume that when it moves into that phase, it's eligible, that it will be, it's inevitable to be notified. So focus on that and that report that comes out 6 a.m. Mondays. The second thing to do, and the community can do the same thing, of course, they can start preparing submissions as soon as they see that status change on Development Eye. The second option is for us to make a submission to the newly formed state government regarding this issue and seek that the legislation be changed. And, you know, as just spitballing ideas, you could suggest that they must notify the council or the assessing authority at a particular date, and then they can't commence for 5 business days after, for example. So that means that there could be additional processes in place and time to provide for this and increase community awareness, for example.
Given the current state of the housing crisis and calls from industry to reduce, I guess, the red tape and timelines, I fear we wouldn't have much luck with what you're suggesting, although I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Frustrating.
Yeah, I recognise Councillor Tully's been waiting too, so apologies, Mayor.
Just a quick one. We used to get advised daily on new applications from the day before, and I assume this is all automated. The value of that is that councillors are aware progressively during the week. I subscribe to a national service, it's free around Australia, Planning Alerts I think it's called. So I can get an alert on Tuesday, but I don't get the alert from the Ipswich City Council till the Monday. So I think one of the improvements, and we probably need a little bit of a session, you know, there's bits and pieces here, there's a difference between a new application and when it's going to be advertised, which could be months or a year later. So I just think we need to tweak our ideas, but one thing I think would help would be we go back to the progressive daily advice to councillors rather than, I know Jim gets up at 6 o'clock on each Monday morning to see what there is in the pipeline.
You're up at about 4, aren't you, Councillor Tully?
So I just leave it at that, and I know we're in a new phase of, this is the first time we've had general business, so I think it's been rather productive to what we've said.
Sorry, Mayor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. And before I start, I'd just like to thank yourself, Chair, and Councillor Mann, for obviously all the councillors received an email yesterday saying, hey, we're going to raise this so we can have a good discussion. So I thank you for that because it gives us an opportunity to think about things. A big part of the reason why we've, I think when council first, what was it called, PRD Online, we were very much cutting edge when that came out. And again, with Development Eye, you know, continuing to be at the forefront there. Any of us can set up and the whole idea is to have that you know, pull down rather than us being efficient, I guess, as councillors, not getting the organisation to run 1 million reports. Any of us can set that up to receive the notification, like the General Manager said, ourselves. So whether just maybe some councils need to have a sheet on how to do that, but that's how many of our residents do it and as well. I also note the fact there's a difference between when something's lodged and just say something's approved, like I think maybe the current ones out at Thurgoona, and versus public notification. That's something that we have been wrestling with, that council will give an approval for something, but we actually, and they're given a window for when public notification and other things need to happen, and we don't control that. And there's often a time lag. So you'll see that in Development Eye, there is an area that there's a field there on public notification, and how do we get an alert to that, I think is also really important. So I don't know if you have an update on that, General Manager, or not.
Could I clarify, Mayor, when you mean approval, you mean that it's approved to start public notification? Is that what you mean, rather than the full development being approved, or? So
council may give an approval for a development, but I guess it'll come back to, I guess, to Thurgoona, where there'll be actually the actual plans for what's actually going there, and that's what's happening at the moment out at Thurgoona, where it was approved, I think October last year, for that 359 development, and there was a lot of community consultation done out there at the Rosewood Library and other areas. I don't know if I could ask the General Manager to probably go to a bit more detail on that, on what the implications of public notification and how we get notified of that, because that's, I think, probably the missing step for us when we're, you know, chatting with our residents.
Yeah, and there's probably a broader issue there of the understanding of code assessment and impact assessment, and also how we define that. So to start, the whole question of code versus impact, the planning scheme sets whether something's code or impact. It's not an ad hoc decision by an officer. Now, that's a sense of tension for some of the residents, because when a development application comes in, they automatically feel they need a voice, and they want to make a submission. So, of course, they can make a submission on every application, but only impact assessment applications are properly made submissions and give them appeal rights. So there's been a push from the state to make more development code accessible versus impact accessible, particularly when it's development that's consistent with the intent of that area. So residential in residential, commercial in commercial. On the issue of community awareness, we did run some sessions in Walloon and Thurgoona to try and build community awareness of the long-term planning that's been in place. So if you look at areas like Walloon and Thurgoona and Ripley, it's whilst development activities building, the actual activity of planning for it has been in place for 30 years or more in some cases. And so, you know, the Ripley example is Ripley didn't start till 2014 in terms of turning dirt to start the development, but planning had been in place for almost 30 years in the preemption for that. So it shouldn't be a surprise when development occurs, but obviously it can be. The second part of that is the two-phased issue of public notification. So obviously that's a little bit confusing when you've got someone eligible for public notification versus commencing public notification. As I said earlier, the only way to fix that is to get the legislation changed. But we do try and provide that information on the system. Like, we could equally not start a task in Development Eye and not say it's eligible for public notification. The downside of that would be that people can't actually or don't see it, and by the time they notice it, it might be a week into the notification, giving them only 2 weeks to prepare.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a couple of questions if you could indulge me, Councillor Doyle. You stated before that the applicant has up to 20 business days to commence the public notification, and from the time of the commencement, any person wanting to make a submission, they have 15 business days? 15 business days to submit their their submission. If we were to go out, as you suggested, we can be advised, and as soon as it's ready to go for public notification, not necessarily when it does. If someone was to put a submission in that first 20 days before a matter was actually publicly notified, is that still considered a properly made submission?
The operation of the legislation is technically it's not a properly made submission because it has to be received within the period of time. So we try and manage that by responding to submitters, and this again can be a source of frustration for submitters because they'll put the effort in and then we might respond and go, look, unfortunately it's not properly made because it's not within the period and we need them to resubmit within the period to be technically correct. So
we do at least offer that?
Yeah, we offer that advice,
okay.
and we actually give a written response to every submission, even when we get large volumes of them. And I suppose importantly, the thing that I would be recommending to the community is as soon as you see an application come in or a prompt from Development Eye, if you've signed up, you should start preparing a submission. And you can use our information request to assist in the preparation of the submission. And that gives you the most time possible. You shouldn't wait until the sign appears on the land. You should make representations as soon as you can. And also, nothing is to prevent a submitter from sending a letter directly to the developer or the applicant to express their concerns. And then, of course, for impact assessment, it's always best to, if you make that early submission, resubmit during the public notification phase.
Just for the record and for the public record, obviously a submission doesn't have to be an objection. It could be a submission for the proposal as well. I just feel that needed to be said. But Councillor Doyle, you had something further to say or add?
Yeah, you may not be able to answer this, Mr. Davey, but does it regularly occur that two different applicants, two different developments open for public notification on the same day?
I would say not regularly, but you've got to also appreciate the way that they go about doing this. So some developers do it themselves or do it themselves with their traditional consultants. Other developers actually have engagements with a specialist consultant. There's maybe 2 or 3 specialist consultants that all they do is public notification because it's complex to make sure you get it right. So in those cases, it might just be coincidental that company says, well, we're going out there, we're in that street, actually we'll do them at the same time.
Where that coincidence does occur, does that place extra strain on council from the work we have to do?
Not necessarily, unless it's a proposal that's going to generate 5,000 submissions, which is thankfully a rarity.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just add one thing? In the discussion, I alluded to the fact there's some different ways we can approach this. Perhaps we can have some options prepared, like to cover different, the time of the original lodgement, advertising issues and so on, so we can...
brought back to this committee, or should we, or a working...
Oh, we might have a...
one of those briefing sessions that
briefing session, perhaps, yeah.
Can have a 15, 20-minute discussion around it, yep.
Just to add to Councillor Doyle's comment about the state, if you're within the advertising period, but we are asking the state that they can't advertise for the first 5 days because they've got to give 5 days' notice, I think that is almost doomed to put a cross against it. But I acknowledge the different combinations and permutations involved. I think we can get a reasonable solution out of this issue raised by Councillor Madden.
Yeah, I think it's been a very productive discussion. Sorry, Mayor Harding.
So, Chair, I just note, and certainly the people here who've got more corporate history than I have, but Ipswich has been planned to be the fastest growing city for some time, for some decades, and it is now happening. It didn't happen overnight. If you look at some of the planning instruments from our 2006 planning scheme, from the 1997 Local Government Springfield Zoning Act to the Ripley Valley PDA, this has been a long time coming, and the General Manager also talked about the fact that some of the planning for the growth out in the Western Corridor, in our western suburbs, has been in plans for 30 years in previous schemes as well. I'd just like to highlight that the Planning Institute of Australia actually awarded this council their overall winner, in the 2024 Planning Institute of Australia Awards for the work that we did in the consultation, in particular for the new Ipswich planning scheme, which we're happy to bring in a few months, because we are fast growing, because you want to be really transparent and make sure that that people are aware, but it's also an education process for everyone involved as well as what we can and can't do, but also give that feedback to the state government, because we have to adhere to the Planning Act. So I just want to say that really pleased to have this general discussion so we can see how we can make sure that our residents are empowered, but also letting them know what we can and can't do as well in regards to the state and how we advocate to them. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Madden.
Oh, just a few comments. There's been some discussion about a subdivision at Thagoona of 300 lots. This isn't that subdivision. This is a subdivision for 6 lots.
All right.
It's a reconfiguration, but what's of major concern to the residents and to me as well is the height of the buildings. In the application, the height of the buildings are given at 2 stories, 3 stories and 5 stories.
Ooh.
Now, we're talking about Thagoona.
Yeah,
We're not talking about the terrace at North Ipswich.
That'd stand out at Thagoona, I would think.
That's right. Anyway, I think given the discussion, it's clear what I've got to do. What I've got to do is do whatever, and it may not be me that does this, I need to organise that I get notification of DAs on a daily basis. That's clearly what I have to do, and perhaps Mr Davey could send details to Division 4 as to how that's done. That'd be great. But
that might be worthwhile circulating to everyone.
Yeah, but just following on from something that Councillor Doyle said, and I have noticed this as well. I've got 3 DAs at the moment that have the same consultation period, and I can tell you what the consultation period is. It's not a very friendly consultation period. It's the 7th of November to the 19th of December, and I've got 3. I've got 3 DAs with the same consultation. Now, I hadn't thought, Councillor Doyle, I hadn't thought about what impost that puts on council staff, and I don't know that we can do anything about it. But I hate to think there's some sort of nefarious sort of activities going on here where they're locking in a certain. I think it's just leading up to Christmas. It's probably the only time period that was available. Certainly, we wouldn't have a time period beyond 19th of December. I think it was just the end of the year. DAs were a bit late, and maybe you might want to comment on that.
Yeah, through the chair, there's a separate exclusion period across Christmas where you can't undertake public notification. So that would be around the 19th or 20th of December. The community often perceive nefarious intent when public notification happens on a school holiday, when people are away. And I don't think there is an answer to this issue. Some people are more accessible on school holidays and it's better, others aren't. But there is certainly an exclusion zone beyond the Christmas to New Year close down to try and address some of those issues. And if for example, a developer started on the 18th of December, then that period of time would actually be excluded. So it might end up them being a notification process for 6 weeks or something like that. But technically they need to go to only 15 business days, but a lot of those would be excluded.
So yes, public holidays are different with respect to school holidays. Public holidays are excluded, aren't they? Whereas school holidays are not.
Correct, and there's just a bit of concern on local public holidays, because obviously a show holiday here is not a show holiday or the same day in Brisbane, but that's the only exception.
Is that an exception locally, at least?
I've just got to double check the wording of the legislation.
Okay.
I believe it is. And the last thing I'd share is happy to work with yourselves to develop, whether it's an automated regime that is different from what's now to achieve the outcomes you want. But I believe the divisional staff are quite aware of how to update development and set up that material, and there's material available on the website for the community to use to be able to do the same thing, but happy to assist the councillors in their understanding and getting the right information at the right time.
Thank you. Appreciate. No further discussion. Appreciate your assistance with that general business item. Mr Davey, is there any, nothing further to come from that other than the discussions? Obviously you've taken notes, both yourself, Mr Davey, and CEO. Is there any other general business to be raised? There being no further general business, I move that I close the meeting at the time being...
We don't need to, but I'd suggest that we determine the time of the starting in the Finance and Government.
Yes, I was going to.
Yeah, but
and
you'd
looking
already
at the
said
time.
that you'd close the meeting.
Sorry?
I thought you said you'd close the meeting, which is too late to move that motion.
I was going to close it at this time and then as part of the same motion or the same thing.
I think they should be separate proposals.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Look, obviously we're going to close the meeting. So the motion that the next meeting commence at, we should have morning tea. 10:45.
11, I've got calls to make.
11 o'clock, satisfied with
Yeah,
that?
I'll move
11
that.
o'clock.
Be 11 o'clock.
Very good. All those in favour? Against, that's carried. Meeting's now closed at 10:28. Thank you.